2017 was how we really fell into the vacation rental space. So prior to that, our property experience was really around what we call in the UK buy-to-let properties. So I think for you guys, it's kind of the multi-family space, just renting out to the normal family essentially, and that was kind of our background. And doing that along with the day job. So my background, actually, from a commercial point of view, is in was in the automotive retail sector. So that was the day job, and what I earned over and above what I needed went into building the buy-to-let or multifamily portfolio. So fell into vacation rentals in 2017, and what we quickly found with that is hopefully some of your listeners will know, we could generate more revenue from the vacation rental and the short-term rental stuff, and that's what really gained our intrigue. So across the next 12 months, from early 2017 to sort of the back end of 2018, we added some more vacation rentals of our own. And at that point in time, I left the motor industry, so property became my full-time job in 2017. And we started doing vacation rental management just for friends of friends and people that we knew. We ended up with a couple of clients that we stumbled upon that wanted to get into vacation rental management or get into vacation rental investment, and didn't know how to do that. So we effectively provided a service for them. And essentially that kind of embryonic phase there of providing a service for those clients has now evolved into the multiple brands that we have. So all the different things that we did across that sort of 18 month period in the vacation rental space, in terms of finding the right type of properties that would work as vacation rentals, having to think about what does that need to look like internally from a design point of view, because again, it can't be the same as what we call a standard buy-to-let, where someone's going to live in it. It needs to be unique and really attractive and welcoming for someone to come into. So how does that work from a design point of view? Well, once you've designed it, you need to purchase that furniture, you need to install it. If there's refurbishment works that need doing, then that needs doing. There's a little bit difference on the funding, the legal. So all these different things that we were going through on our own journey and on a small scale for those couple of clients that we had at that point in time, is where we've now evolved. So all those little things that we did at that point, each component part of that has now evolved into their own businesses essentially. So take the interior design side of what we were doing on a small scale there. Interior design is now one of our brands. It's called Styled Interior Design, and the bulk of what we do there is interior design work specifically for short-term rentals, vacation rentals, for our own clients, but also then for external clients as well, who might not use our property management service but come to us for our expertise on really being able to generate maximum revenue from a short-term rental because it's set up and designed in the right way, basically. So they've all evolved out of a need or a requirement for a client, and to a certain degree we've always tried to keep as much of that in-house as possible. So we try not to use external providers. We'll try and do it ourselves in-house and then build that from that point in time. So you could say I'm a little bit of a control freak, Kirby, I suppose, but that's certainly where I get the enjoyment from it, is actually those multiple different aspects. And that's why I love vacation rental so much more than the kind of standard multifamily stuff, because you've got so much more dynamism to it, and you can tweak things and play with things to generate more revenue and generate more occupancy. For me, it's a much more fluid, more dynamic business that you can really get stuck into, where the multifamily investment is kind of a bit set and forget, which is good to a certain degree, but not if you're enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. I'm looking at your website here. I've got it pulled up, and you can see all the different brands. So if you go to SDDE Smith Group.com, you can see all the different brands and how these sort of help each other. One hand feeds the other almost when it comes to all the different steps. And each step in the process, you even have a legal company here, which is obviously a step in the process. And so it's once you get to that step, there's another brand that can help you with that. And I've talked to, or I've had friends in the past, I've been investing for last 12, 13 years. And when it came to like flipping properties, I've had friends who said, well, I'm going to start I'm going to become a broker so I can handle that part of it. I'm going to start a construction company then so I could do that part of it. I'm going to have an investment company, a lending company, all these different components of the whole process. And I haven't seen as many people have success with that as they thought they would. What they find typically, I think, is that it's a lot to manage. And I think they try to manage it all themselves. And so I'm super fascinated with the systems that you must have in place to operate such a massive overarching brand that controls all these other brands. So I guess, what do these 340 people do, and what's the reporting structure like to where you're able to even sit here and have a conversation without your hair on fire?
So if you take the business as today, I think we're about 375 roughly, maybe slightly more in terms of total employee count. A big portion of that, so around 100 and probably 140, 150 of those will sit within our facilities management business. So that's covering housekeeping and maintenance. And when I talk about maintenance, they're really reactive maintenance, and that sits separate to our construction division, which focuses on true construction services. So facilities management is a big piece. So and our point of difference there is we directly employ all of those people. So we manage just over 900 vacation rentals in our host and stay portfolio, and of those 900 we provide housekeeping and maintenance services to 75% of them, and that's delivered out via that in-house team, where most of our competitors from a management point of view, and quite a lot of operators, even just single investors, will probably outsource that cleaning to a third party or a subcontractor or to a smaller cleaning company. Again, our belief, because I'm a control freak, is we want to have that in-house so we can control quality, we can control cost, we can control process. And that's really given us a unique advantage in the marketplace, because most of our competition don't want to deal with that type of operation. They kind of don't see themselves. They might say they're property managers, but the reality is they're really marketing agencies. They might be generating the booking for that property owner. They're giving the guest the information to get to the property, but when the guest gets there, it either becomes a responsibility of the owner or it becomes the responsibility of a third party to actually make sure that property is serviced properly. Whereas for us, we want control of that, because that's the determining factor whether that guest has a good stay. It's the control of the review, and for us also it's that kind of full end-to-end relationship with our clients and our property owners. Don't get me wrong, we get stuff wrong from time to time. We're not perfect, so we will miss cleans, or it might not be right, and the nature of the beast that goes with having 150 housekeepers. But for us, we believe in that kind of, the book starts and stops with those, and we want to make sure we've got control of that, because ultimately it determines the success of that individual property. So in terms of how that then flows up, so if you like, our 375 employees, a big bulk of those are on the ground staff servicing those properties, because without those guys, if there's no housekeeping or no housekeeper to clean that property when the guest checks out, then that's the process stops there, and we all know the challenges around recruitment and getting those services is not easy. If you take the rest of the structure, so the rest of our workforce is obviously quite office heavy, and if you look at our structure, we've evolved quite a lot in the last 12 months. So we are still a family business and a family owned business, but the board that reports into me, I've now got a group operations director, a sales director, finance director, a head of people and places who works across our overseeing our colleague base, but also what work we do in the local community and connecting with councils and local kind of parliament and such like. We've got a CTO within the group, so we've got now at our size, a board structure, and then underneath those, then you've got our line management level as well. But effectively, we've had to build up to that level, and I suppose I come from a corporate background, so you have an idea of what that structure should look like and feel like. So as we built the business and accelerated the business over the last 3 or 4 years, I'm always trying to think ahead of what structure we need to be working to. I mean, to be honest, I've just come out of I've spent my day to day in our group finance review, and we're talking about what our group structure needs to be in 2025 at the moment, because we've got an objective we're trying to get to. So, we're working 18 months ahead, thinking, right, what structure do we need to be at, and what steps are we taking over the next 12 and 18 months to get to us to that end point in 18 months' time. So, it's having that kind of that end objective and working back from that to think, okay, what do we need to do over the X period of time to get to where we are at that point. But don't get me wrong, when we had 25 properties, I was doing everything from guest communications to meeting investor clients to doing some housekeeping and some cleaning and doing some laundry and linen, so that we've myself and my family have done every job there is to do in the business, basically.
Yeah I know the feeling. And we have 21 vacation rental listings now, and I feel like there's a lot of details to stay on top of with 21. So my head spins when I think about 900 properties. But it brings up a couple questions. So the main, one thing you brought up is finding help, that boots on the ground workers that are reliable, that are going to do a good job, because that is the bread and butter. They don't do a good job, nothing else matters, because you're going to get bad reviews, and it's like this snowball effect. So, so that's the question I get a lot from community members who are getting into this: is how do I find good cleaners? How do I manage them? What do you guys do, especially at scale, because you can't have the personal relationship with every cleaner, to keep these people motivated, make them want to do a good job, as opposed to just check a box and I did the minimum, and it's not my job if the garbage is all over the place outside, or landscaping looks bad. I clean the house, and that's all I was responsible for. Yeah.
So I think if we start with the recruitment aspect, and I guess for a lot of operators, you've kind of got the choice of whether you outsource to a third party, and then what that looks like, and then also at what point you start to either directly employ or directly engage individuals to fulfill that service for you. And kind of we operated in the early days, we've kind of always operated the direct model rather than utilising smaller cleaning companies. We've always looked for individual people that we can employ directly or have a direct contract with to fulfill that service, but then for us to guide them on what that service is. So being explicitly clear on what our standards are, what does that cleaning checklist look like, so what are all the items they must complete in that property as part of that job, and then how they evidence that back. So if you take, we use a system called Breezeway, which many of you have heard of, on our housekeeping side. So really, as we've evolved, we've evolved from a pretty much a hand-printed check sheet that went out with every housekeeper into obviously a system that does that, and then photographs back, etc. So, but in the early days, it was literally a 3-page checklist of all the things that need to be completed when that cleaner goes into that property. And from a recruitment point of view, if I look at our current structure on recruitment, we have 2 people in our business who are just dedicated day in, day out to recruit housekeepers. That's all they do. So every day they're on job posting sites, Facebook groups, etc., getting the word out there that we're looking for housekeepers, what we are about as a business, doing telephone interviews with those guys, then booking those candidates in to meet one of our housekeeping managers to do their on-the-ground interview out and go and do kind of what we call as a training clean, where they'll go out with one of our more experienced housekeepers and see what the job is all about and what's expected of them. And we try and have a few barriers in place for that, because we want to try and, to a certain degree, force that person to not want to do the job before they're employed to do the job. Because the last thing we want is just to sign someone up and then they do it once, and the next time they just don't show up. So we try and purposely put a few hurdles in that they've got to jump over to test whether they actually are going to show up, or are they going to drop out at the kind of first hurdle ultimately. But for me, consistency is the key on that. We've got to always be recruiting. We've got to make sure our training is really, really detailed, because with the type, and I don't like to say the type of individual you're dealing with, but in terms of by the law of nature, in terms of the housekeepers, we need to be very prescriptive with them ultimately, in terms of what the expectation is and what the standard is. And also we have to realise that probably 20% of our housekeeping headcount is going to be we're going to be losing them all the time. So because they've dropped off because they no longer want to do the job, or the standard isn't right. So there's always going to be this 20% churn at the bottom end of where the standards aren't right, or they don't want to do that job. So we've got to always be topping that up, which is where the consistency aspect comes in. But I think back to kind of the reframe the point back for your listeners is, I would say anyone that's looking at getting that housekeeping service is trying to make that choice of, am I gonna find a company to do it for me, and what does that mean? I'm probably going to pay a higher price and I'm going to have less control. But then on the flip side, if I can go and find that resource and employ them directly or contract them directly, I can get a reduced cost, but I need to be prepared that I need to be more prescriptive with them and maybe manage them a bit more and have that process. But again, that can be done with good planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I feel a little bit better about our process now after hearing yours, because it mirrors a lot of the similar features, and I share that exact same thing with a lot of people I work with, that, you know, we've worked with cleaning companies in the past that it's the same kind of struggle where it's like they have their own systems, you have to fit that mold, they're sending somebody different all the time to that property, and there's not the quality control as opposed to hiring a direct subcontractor that you can kind of manage directly, and they're the same person showing up every time. So I think that's a huge point for people to take away from this. One other question before I get into, I want to hear more about like the properties specifically and some of, you know, how you have had better performance than a lot of your peers over the last several years. But one question that comes up when I think about scale, because I'm sort of a control freak as well, and it's hard for me to imagine scaling this size this quickly, because I feel like there'd be a lot of things happening that I couldn't have control over. So when you scale, a lot of times you see companies trade profitability for size. And I know this is probably something as the owner you've thought about a lot. How do you maintain those profit margins as you increase in size? And so what have you done, I guess, to, I mean, number one, I guess, have you been able to maintain profitability as you've grown? And what are the things that you do to make sure that, you know, you're not finding yourself upside down with a big company and no profit?
Yeah, totally. So certainly from a profitability point of view, so yes, we've been profitable, I think go back here. So 2019, since 2019, we've been profitable basically. So 2018 was our only loss-making year, which effectively was our first year of breaking into the management space and really wanting to drive that as a business offering. And we've been profitable since that time. So we've grown quickly, and everything that we've generated has been redeployed into that growth within the business. You know, we certainly haven't treated the last few years, and don't see our next few years as being trying to be as profitable as we possibly can in a single year, if you know what I mean, in terms of trying to create a cash cow, so to speak. We're reinvesting in the business for that long-term growth, essentially. And if you take that of our unit growth from basically 9 properties under management December 2018 to the 900 today, we've invested a lot from a marketing point of view. So, you know, if I take our marketing budget for this year, our marketing budget is about 1.2 million. A lot of that, you know, I could probably strip out, if I wanted to make as much profit in this particular year as possible, I could probably strip out $750,000. But the question then is, how much does that impact my growth in next year, 2025, 2026? Because a lot of those high value marketing assets, so we do quite a lot around soccer sponsorship in the UK and sports sponsorship, etc., and they've got high values against them, but they're brand exercises for us, because we're trying to build goodwill value into our host and stay brand is the one we lead with. That's our vacation rental management business. We're trying to build in that long-term value so that we become a household name from a vacation rental management point of view in the UK marketplace. And that's where that comes in. If I was purely trying to just make as much money today, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be trying to make as much money today and using it more of a cash cow. Whereas, because we want that growth, our ambition is to get up to 5,000 properties under management by the end of 2025. So we're investing for that continued compound growth, basically.
I see.
And again, everyone's different. If our aspiration was to, get to a set number of properties under management and then make the business as profitable as we possibly could, then our approach would be different ultimately. But because we're continuing to build, and we're building this for the medium to long term for me, which is that kind of 3 to 5 year horizon, then we're investing heavily, mainly in marketing, but again, now in technology, in bringing more experienced people in the business at board level to support on that growth. So you're investing from that point of view, which you've got to take a 3 to 5 year time horizon view on it, really.
Yeah, no, and yeah, absolutely, and that all makes sense as you're growing, and that's, I think most of those things are from an expense side of things. What do you do from a income side of things? Where have you narrowed in your focus on the most? Are there certain areas that are most profitable? Certain brands that you're looking to grow the quickest? Certain types of properties you want to manage? What's from an income side of things? What's your focus?
So if you take our group structure, so that those sort of 12 brands that we touched on at the beginning of the call, our host and stay brand, our vacation rental management brand is at the core. That ultimately is the kind of spoke of everything that we do. So, and all of the group it is set up in a way that it supports a host and stay client. So our perfect client, we're purchasing the property for them through our real estate agency brand. It goes into our legal services brand to facilitate that transaction. It then goes into our construction brand to carry out the refurbishment works or conversion works, depending on how big the project is. They work with our interior design team to deliver the internal specification to the best it can be to generate the most revenue, and then it obviously moves on to our host and stay brand then for the ongoing management. So that's our perfect client. They come in that front space and they go through all of our brands, but the brands are also set up in a way that they've got to stand on their own 2 feet. So take our legal services brand, only about 10% of the revenue in that business comes in through that channel. The rest of it is actually just providing kind of external client work to non-related parties from that point of view. So, but what that does, it also promotes our wider group. So a lot of clients that end up being Graysmith legal clients will find out about what we do on the vacation rental management side, or on the construction side, or on the real estate agency side by being a client in that business. So that's when you get the compound effect of having a wider group with multiple different brands feeding back into kind of that one central pot. But certainly host and stay is at the epicenter of what we do, and the other brands around that are set up as facilitators to do that, but they do have to stand on their own 2 feet. So we don't have a brand or a business within the group that solely relies on the host and stay business to get its work and its revenue. They've got to be bringing in their own revenue as well as facilitating the host and stay work. And as we look forward, we've kind of got, say, that at the core. We have a new product or a new brand which we brought in pre-revenue in January, which is a business called Resi Central. And what we've created there, so I'm sure your listeners have heard of products such as Minute and Noise Aware within properties. So what we were looking for in host and stay was knowing or seeing the fact that we're going to have massive pressure on utility cost rises coming in, which we saw last year, which we're probably going to continue to see. We were looking for a product that would enable us to better manage the property for our owners and mitigate some of those increases in energy costs, plus with knowing what we need to do from a sustainability perspective. And quite frankly, we couldn't find the product. So we ended up stumbling upon this business that had the hardware there, more or less, couldn't quite get it to market, wasn't quite generating revenue. So we acquired that business in, and off the back of that, we created our own version, if you like, of, I would call it looks like a hexagonal smoke alarm. But within that, you've got noise monitoring, heat control, or temperature control, microwave sensor for movement. We've got TVOC in terms of actually if someone's smoking, we can actually determine what they were smoking. So again, for picking up on that. So we have a range of different sensors in there. So it's a bit like a Minute or a Noise Aware, but kind of on steroids. But the point of difference we've created with that is then we take action off the back of those readings. So what we're now doing is if a guest is in a property and they've got it at 24 degrees as an example, or for you guys like 90 Fahrenheit, let's say they've got it set as in there, like as some people like to do. What we're now doing, if that guest then leaves the property and leaves it at that extremely high temperature, there's nothing you can really do about that unless you're managing that unit as a person on an individual level. What we can do with our technology now is we can set rule engines that basically says there's no CO2 reading, there's no movement on the microwave sensor, therefore we know nobody's in the property, therefore reduce the temperature back down to a reasonable level, and also make sure all the lights are switched off.
Wow.
And we're doing that on an automatic basis. So that product will be a big one for us going forward. It'll be a core solution for us on our vacation rental management to provide a better service for our property owners and help them save money. But we'll retail that into the wider short-term rental and student rental space as well. So as a focus on kind of future growth and future profitability, we see that part of the business being really core to what we offer as a group service. So we've got host and stay at the centre, but we have got other projects coming in that facilitate, again, what we do on host and stay, but will end up being retailed as products to the kind of wider industry in general, really.
Awesome. So somebody listening to this, could they buy that product and put it in their vacation rental?
So they could in the US right now, not quite yet, but towards the end of this year, fourth quarter, then we'll pretty much be retailing globally. But we've literally just started to retail in the UK as of a few weeks ago on that product.
That's amazing. And I imagine with that scale, just controlling one of those aspects, I mean, lowering the temperature a little bit across 900 properties makes a massive difference in the bottom line at the end of the year, and a huge selling feature to people who are considering you or your competitor for management. So much wisdom there. And I also want to emphasize what you said in the beginning too, that if you're thinking about creating these different brand structures or companies that feed each other, I think it's so important what you said, that they need to stand on their own. You have their own set of books. They're profitable by themselves, and you're not bleeding other companies, which is what I've seen in the past when people have tried to set up the structure. One component or a couple components aren't profitable, and they're bleeding the profitable one to try to save these others.